Welcome back to Driftwood Ranch, the home of Randy Ray and the Literate Texan. I have a tag for you, even though I'm a day late because I believe it's Wednesday and this is for Tag Tuesday, but I was tagged by Book Chat with Pat in the Bookish Elements tag, a new tag for 2025, which was created by Sarah at My Granny Era. And like most tags, it's a series of questions. We'll go through them. I'm going to answer them. Number one, how do you feel about foreshadowing or dropped hints? Well, I feel fine with foreshadowing and dropped hints. You know, it's a traditional part of literature and novels and short stories for a long time. What I do have a problem with are spoilers. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I don't think that fiction should have spoilers on the back cover or the front cover, except the most very minor spoilers. But what really gets me is when there are major spoilers in the introduction to a book. That's, terrible. But yeah, foreshadowing, dropped hints, it's just like any other literary technique. It can be used well, it can be used poorly. It depends on, the author and how deft they are or aren't at using that particular literary technique. That was question number one. Question number two, bookmarks. What do you use? How do you feel about bending the corner down? I never bend a corner down on a book. I hate dog ears, but I have been known to use a, what is this? The dust jacket. I have been known to use the dust jacket as a bookmark when I can't get my hands on another bookmark, but I will use almost anything as a bookmark that I can get my hands on, and I have some examples here. This is a napkin, but if you fold it in half like this, makes a perfect little bookmark, doesn't it? Okay, so I'll use that. Friend of mine, I think he was half joking, got me a reacher grabber the other day. I would not be able to use this as a bookmark. However, oops, whoa, it flops around on me. However, it did come with an instruction guide, which is the perfect size for a bookmark. And I would gladly use it as a bookmark and almost certainly will at some point. Also, I'm a member of the Book of the Month Club. This is not a sponsored video. I don't have a recommendation about them one way or the other, but I've been a member for several years. And they send out a bookmark every month, which is kind of cool. This one says, Until We Read Again. This one says, I'm a freak between the sheets. Ha! That's cute. They always say cute things on them. They make great bookmarks. Also, currently, I'm using a bookmark from my local bookstore, Recycled Books, Records, and CDs. And coming soon to my channel, I'm going to launch a Patreon. I have bookmarks designed for that. And they're going to have artistic pictures of me, which will probably be the only bookmarks I ever use again because I'm an egomaniac. And I probably figure that most of my viewers, you, will also never use any other bookmark again because, let's face it, I'm kind of an egomaniac. Number three, forgotten bookmarks. Have you ever found anything strange in a book? Okay, so I do a lot of shopping, or did at one time anyway, when I was a little more mobile, at Recycled Books and Records. And so most of those books there are used. And so you never know what you're going to find in them. I can't remember anything that stands out particularly, but I always enjoy finding someone else's old bookmark, especially if it's a postcard or something, or with something written on it. And that's happened multiple times. So forgive me, every now and then I have to hydrate. It's because of the meds that I'm on. It makes my mouth dry. I wish I had something more interesting to talk about, but I've never found anything particularly strange in a book. But yeah, I'm always finding stuff in there that's interesting at the time, but also forgettable. Number four, inscriptions and annotations. How do you feel about writing in a book, and how do you annotate if you do? Well, first of all, if I'm giving a book as a gift to someone, I try to inscribe it, but I try not to inscribe it on the page that the author would sign. So, but I always try to leave a note in a book if I'm giving it to somebody. And then as far as annotation goes, I see a lot of videos that talk a lot about annotating your books. It helps you remember it. I don't do a lot of annotation. And I do consider myself a collector, but not all my books are collector's items. If it's a book that I'm planning to keep, reread, I probably will annotate something in it. I did make some annotations in this copy of Table for Two by Amor Towles because I intend to review it. And there's some things in here that I want to point out. I'm probably going to have to put some Post-it notes in there on the pages that I've annotated. But I'm very minimalist when it comes to annotating. Usually it's straight lines. I don't use a highlighter. And if I write something in there, it might be something as simple as "that's funny" every 100 pages or something like that. Let's see here. Number 5, introductions and footnotes. Do you read them or avoid? What makes a good introduction? I avoid introductions now because they are too often filled with major spoilers without any kind of warning. And the worst case of this that I can remember is when I read Lonesome Dove. There was a major spoiler in the introduction. I do not recommend reading the introduction, whether it's by the author or not. Unless you just don't care about spoilers, and I know some people don't care. Now, as far as footnotes go, though, I read footnotes, and I think everyone should, more or less, depending on the book. If you're reading something by David Foster Wallace and you're skipping the footnotes, you're skipping half the book. Same thing with The House of Leaves. The footnotes are really important. They're part of the narrative. But that's not true about every book that you read with footnotes. Sometimes the footnotes are meaningless, So it's a judgment call you have to make. I think, during the first chapter or so, you take a look at the footnotes and see how important they are and then decide whether or not to skip them. But yeah, definitely skip the introduction. You can read the introduction after you finish the book. Number 6, accessories. Do you use bookish accessories like a clip-on reading light, book sleeve, annotation materials, book stand, etc.? Well, I did do some annotating in that book earlier today, so I do have a ballpoint pen in my pocket that I've been using for that. I got a Christmas present a few years ago from a lady that I was very, very fond of, and I'm still very fond of. She got me a clip-on book light, reading light, and I really enjoyed that while I was using it, but I didn't use it for very long. It was kind of flimsy. I think she got it from Barnes & Noble or something like that. I was really appreciative of the gift, and it definitely demonstrated how well she knew me, but no, I don't use a lot of accessories when I read. Usually it's just me and the book. Number 7, art and illustrations. How do cover art and illustrations affect your reading experience? Well, that depends somewhat on the book. If I'm reading a graphic novel, like, for example, Superman for All Seasons, it's all art, almost, at least 50% art, but more. I enjoy Victorian novels and Victorian literature. The artwork, the illustrations for the Sherlock Holmes stories, for example, or the Charles Dickens novels, they're terrific. They really give you a sense of being in that time and place when those books were originally written. As far as cover art goes, I think it's really unfortunate that there's so much sameness in today's books when it comes to cover art, especially when it comes to rom-com novels, which is a secret vice of mine. Not so secret. I talk about my love of rom-coms, but all these Emily Harris books that, everybody emulates the cover of it. I don't think that her book was the first. It's a fairly recent phenomenon, but I think it's unfortunate that they're not more original than they are. But yeah, I like cover art. I think this is really classy cover art right here, Table for Two. This gives me a real sense of what the book is like before I even crack it open. And then number 8, this is the last question, or the next to last question, sort of. Format. Which format of books do you prefer? Hardback, paperback, audio, digital? Do you do different things for different situations? And yes, I do different things for different situations. I prefer to read a hardback. They generally have a bigger font size. I'm also not opposed to digital books, although I still prefer the Dead Tree version, even if I can get a bigger font on my Kindle. I still prefer to hold an actual book in my hands. And then I'll read paperbacks, but it's not my preference. I like to read hardcover books. It's just how I am. Audiobooks, I like to listen to audiobooks when I'm driving. I often listen to audiobooks first thing in the morning when I'm conducting my physical therapy. So those are the prompts. I am going to tag a few people, but if I don't mention you by name, do this tag anyway if you want to. You know, it's free for all here on BookTube. But I'll put the prompts down in the description below, along with the names of these booktubers that I am tagging, some of whom, or all of whom, are favorites of mine. Michael K. Vaughan, Criminale, Bryn Booth Jones, Roy Reads Anything, and Grammaticus Books. Consider yourselves tagged. And thanks for watching. I'll be back with another video soon. Until then, please stay hydrated and stay sexy, folks.